Welcome back. What role do historically black colleges and universities serve here in Florida? Of the 107 schools nationwide, 4 are here in the state. Florida A&M University is the largest with more than 100 majors. U.S. News and World Report ranks it among the top 10 HBCUs in the country. There's also Bethune-Cookman University, Florida Memorial University, and Edward Waters College. More than 70% of students at these schools are black. Collectively, these schools have nearly 20,000 students. And joining us for more on HBCUs are Pastor Kelvin Lumpkin of the Light of the World International Church in Sarasota. He's also an alumnus of Bethune-Cookman University. And also Rod Thompson is here. He's president of the Sarasota Republican Club. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us this evening. I want to get, first of all, just your thoughts on the White House shifting the direction and this initiative from the Department of Education into the White House. Share your thoughts.
It could be potentially a good thing. Time is going to tell. With it being in the hands of the White House, there's no layer that black presidents have to go through to get some action. Moving from the Department of Education. So I think it could be a good thing. But I think time is going to tell. And it's pretty early in President Trump's administration, just a couple of months in. So it's kind of hard to make a judgment at this point. But I think it could be good. And
Rod, your thoughts?
I think it's probably going to be good, in part just because of President Trump's personality. He likes to win. He heard that President Obama had a bit of a rocky relationship with the HBCUs, so he sees maybe an opportunity to best his predecessor. There's a number of things that play to Trump's character traits that could work out very well for the HBCUs over time. It could result in more funding, could result maybe in some more freedom and flexibility for them. I think there's a number of ways, particularly if the presidents can play it smartly with the president, in which they actually could really benefit from it being in here. And like Pastor Kelvin says, it eliminates that sort of DOE layer that can cause all sorts of problems.
And Pastor Lumpkin, tell us a little bit about your experience attending an HBCU. You pointed out in Dwayne's story how important it was for you, and tell us why you think that we still need these schools.
Probably a lot of reasons why we still need HBCUs, but of course I'm a product of one, and it was an amazing experience. And for me in particular, not only did I get a good education at Bethune-Cookman University, but for me it was important, probably for me and a lot of other African-American young men, growing up in this country and in Sarasota, and I didn't experience racism to the degree that my parents did. But no doubt about it, I did experience a lot of racism, a lot of harassment from SPD, which I have a great relationship with now. But stopped and harassed a lot when I was driving. I had a car, you know, my birthday in high school, my 11th grade year. So I'm always getting stopped. And so I was beginning to develop a complex, quite frankly. And so attending the HBCU got a good education there, but it was good for my self-esteem as an African American. And I think that's probably, in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons why we still need HBCUs, because of the collective self-esteem of black people, but African-American young men in this country. And so being able to feel good about yourself and have an unfiltered history of African-Americans in this country and in the world, I think was immeasurable. It was a game changer for me, and it helped me see myself in a different light, and I think helped me become the person that I am. And so ironically, when I left an HBCU, I didn't leave with racial hang-ups. I felt like I could fit in society. So for me, if there's no other reason, I think that's reason enough.
Okay. And Rod, your response to, I know you kind of touched on it in Dwayne's story, but your response to maybe the special initiatives that we have for HBCUs versus other universities.
I guess my one question, I mean, Calvin puts an interesting perspective on it that, of course, I don't have that perspective at all, and couldn't. And so there'd be that benefit right there. I think to some degree that benefit probably needs to be weighed against at some point the idea of ultimate total integration in society between the races and the ethnicities. If we're going for ultimately trying to have sort of a colorblind, totally desegregated, totally integrated society, and as you know, non-racial oriented as possible, as humanly possible, which it doesn't seem like we're going in that direction. But if that's what we ultimately want to do, then my question would be, will these still be a good idea in the future? Are they still now? you know, he makes a great case for it on that level. That probably needs to be compared with what the downsides might be of maintaining them also.
Okay, we will get Pastor Lumpkin's response to that in just a moment when we come back. We're just getting started with our conversation. But first, we need to get a check on our forecast. After the break, Bob will be back. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we're discussing the federal funding for historically black colleges and universities. Florida has 4 across the state. Our guests tonight are Pastor Kelvin Lumpkin of the Light of the World International Church and Rod Thompson, president of the Sarasota Republican Club. And when we left to go to break, I wanted to give Pastor Lumpkin an opportunity to respond to some of Rod's comments. And I want you to tell us, do you think that maintaining these HBCUs at all hinders our efforts to become a society where race does not divide us?
I don't, and I understand where Rod is coming from, and I respect his opinion. But here's the reality. We've obviously come some ways in this country in terms of race. We elected an African-American president 2 times, so I think that is progress in my mind, so I'm hopeful. But I think also his presidency showed how far we have to go. And of course, I'm not suggesting that every criticism of Barack Obama was motivated by race, but I think if we're being honest with ourselves, a lot of it was. And even how race played such a role in this last election cycle, with both major party candidates claiming to have the answer to solving some of the problems. But whether their solutions are right or not, we both acknowledge we still have a ways to go. And I think even the way African-American men are seen and viewed, and African Americans in this country, I think we still have some ways to go. So I don't think supporting HBCUs continues to divide us, and I want to see that colorblind society as well. So, but let's say Rod is right and others who feel like they are hindering. Let's remember these historically black colleges are not exclusively black colleges. They are historically black colleges, and more are becoming more diverse. So let's make them more diverse. So why close down HBCUs to promote unity? Close down some other schools and integrate the HBCUs because there are some really good schools. Some of them may be struggling because of infrastructure, which hopefully President Trump's executive order will help deal with some of that. So some of them definitely need an infusion of cash to compete and to attract and recruit students. But let's integrate those schools in it for the sake of diversity, which I'm all for.
And I'm glad you pointed that out, because I did want you to address the fact that these schools do want to diversify, just like other universities want to diversify by adding people of all different races. So do the HBCUs, right? I personally have some friends who are not black who went to an HBCU. So tell us about their effort, just briefly, because I do want to get to Rod's response, but just briefly, they probably have some efforts, I assume, to bring in other students of other ethnicities.
Absolutely. You know, when I was in college, we were not as diverse as HBCUs are now, but I was just at my homecoming, and boy, we've changed a lot. Bethune-Cookman in the however many years since I've been gone. From there, we've really changed a lot. Our women's golf team I don't even know if there's a black person on it, and softball team and things like that. So we're really becoming diverse, and I know when I was there were concerted efforts to attract non-African Americans, and so let's recruit them, because remember, these schools, many of these schools have, well, I believe all of them have amazing histories. So why, just as some other schools, but so why, you know, withhold funding from them? And to Rod's point in the opening segment on the video, I do believe that, and as an HBC alumnus, I think we've got to do better. I think there are a lot of HBCU graduates who've gone on to do great things, and I think we can collectively do a better job in endowing our schools and funding them. So I'm willing to look in the mirror, but I still think they serve a role, and I'm concerned as well. I want to see a diverse society. I want to get to that place where what Dr. King dreamed of, where we're judged by the content of our character and not the color of our skin. I long for that, but I just know that we have a ways to go. Right. I really do.
And Rod, your response, because I know you're chomping at the
Well, first of all, I think that the history of these is fantastic, and anybody that doesn't know the history of how these universities, these colleges came about, really should read it, because you might be surprised at the origins of a lot of them. A very rich and important history and a part of our country. That said, the very point we're talking about here raises questions in my mind as to then furthering why. Because I think the number I saw was something like 21% or so are not black now at the HBCUs, and that seems to be trending further that way. So it seems to me at some point then it kind of loses its point. It could always be designated that because, of course, that's its history, so it's historically black, sure. But it sort of loses its point, and even to some degree the strength that Calvin was speaking of that he got out of it as it becomes more diverse. So you could end up with a Bethune-Cookman, if you have a Bethune-Cookman that, say, ends up being 50-50. I don't know really what the point of it is then at those points, to me.
Although even at 50-50, it would still
it'd
be much more
so.
than any other,
True. True, absolutely. But so then I guess my question is, they probably should be measured based on the quality of that education, the educational output, and then however you could rightly measure the intangibles more that Calvin was talking about, about the identity and the ability to be able to integrate into society out of it. Because honestly, that's counterintuitive to me. Your experience is somewhat counterintuitive to me, only because it seems to me that going to an integrated school would make you more prepared to be in an integrated society. So if you come from a community that's largely black, and you go to schools that are largely black, and your friends are, and then you go to a college that's largely black, well, at some point you enter into the broader society, which is largely not black. So I'm wondering, I was surprised that that was your experience.
I think maybe he was speaking of like almost like a team building atmosphere,
sure,
something like a self-confidence
But
booster.
that won't be there after college.
But I think he's saying he entered the world with that, and that really helped. But we'll finish our final thoughts when we come back from this quick break. We'll be right back with our guests, and we're going to hear what our viewers are saying about last night's topic, which was the possible cancer links with Bayshore High School. Welcome back. President Trump appears to be putting his support behind historically black colleges and universities, a group of schools which did lose some funding under the Obama administration. But what can we expect going forward? Our guests join us for their final thoughts. And I want to start with Pastor Lumpkin. And you made an excellent point in Dwayne's story that the endowment funds, we have mentioned that the endowment funds at these schools are not as large as many other universities. And you're saying the alumni may need to take a hard look at how much they're donating. What support can they put behind their school, right?
Absolutely. And yeah, of course, I think we have to shoulder some of that responsibility. And maybe the schools need to do a better job at stressing the need. So I think from a cultural standpoint, we've got to get ourselves more in the mindset, especially my generation, of supporting schools, because I believe the generation that came before me and before that, I think, have that greater sense of trying to take care of the schools. One of my dad's friends, Mr. Ed Rainey, who had the grades to go to the University of Florida, and he's in his early 80s. I hope he's not watching and hears me say that. Had the grades to go to the University of Florida, but could not just because he was black. So he went to Florida A&M. And so his generation really has that concern to help support HBCUs, and he's worked for years, and maybe even still now, supporting Florida A&M financially and leading alumni efforts in this area. I don't see that so much with my group, and I hope I'm wrong. I just, with those who I went to, I don't see that same kind of commitment. So let me refine my challenge, not just to all HBCU alumni, but of my age group and a little bit younger. I think we've got to step up to the plate because others are doing the same thing and helping their schools do great things.
Right. All right. And Rod, your final thoughts on our topic tonight?
I think that's really going to be tough because in just listening to him, I was thinking that if you're come from a wealthy family and you graduate from Yale, it's really easy for you to share a lot of your wealth. For if you want a wing of something named after you. Most of the black community in our country does not have inherited wealth. And so a lot of them are really launching off their first generation college grads and all, and it would be, I think it's going to be, that's a big haul to ask for very much money. Now, there are other ways to be involved, of course, other than finances, and I think that there probably would be a place for them to be cheerleaders, tutors, mentors, examples, those sorts of things for young black men and women heading into college and at the college even, to help them adapt and prepare them for coming out of the college. There's probably a number of ways that they could actually draw on their strengths that way that could go beyond just a dollar sign.
Right. All right. Well, Thank you, gentlemen, so much. Before we go, we do want to share what some of our viewers are saying about last night's topic, the possible link between Bayshore High School and a statistically significant number of cancer cases. Hundreds of former students who went to the old Bayshore High in Bradenton have been diagnosed with cancer, autoimmune diseases, or had children born with birth defects. Soil samples done multiple times in the past 20 years haven't shown any evidence to support that theory that the soil and groundwater are contaminated. However, the Manatee County Commission is now launching its own investigation. So here's what some of you are saying. Julie Blackwell writes, I truly hope we finally get long-awaited answers to our puzzling cancers, autoimmune disorders, and birth defects of our children. I myself have lupus and several other autoimmune disorders. Finding the true source of our illnesses can better help in our treatment of them. Dominic Demina writes, if a cluster is found, it is likely from asbestos, lead paint, or lead in the water from bad pipes. If you think Flint, Michigan is the only area with bad water pipes, you are nuts. And Susan Pierce writes, I read a bunch of comments from Bayshore alumni on another post. They were all naming people from school who had gotten cancers. Usually when there is a cluster like that, then it's not a coincidence. So do let us know what you think about HBCUs, tonight's topic. You can join the conversation on our page, facebook.com/news@7. You can also watch this discussion on demand, any of our other previous discussions as well on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and on Roku. So thank you to our guests for being here tonight. Kelvin Lumpkin is pastor at Light of the World International Church, and Rod Thompson is president of the Sarasota Republican Club.